Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Spiritist Psychology Study Group on Human Beings in Conflict, Challenge for the Conscious Being, where we explore our unconscious to help us enhance our mental health, our spirituality, and our wholeness based on the teachings of Joanna de Angelis. I'm Fabrício Assunção from the Spirit Society of Bournemouth. We are pleased to have with us here tonight our speaker, Dr. Anaí Fonseca. This evening, will give us a PowerPoint presentation with the main ideas brought by Joanna de Angelis and other authors. We will have time for your questions and a time for us to share first-hand experience related to our study. Anaí Talks Tonight is about subjects from two books by Joanna. Suffering as an Existential Option from the book Moments of Health, Chapter 2, about freedom of choice, and Origin of Suffering from the book Wake Up and Be Happy, Chapter 21, about pain repair, pain and making amends. So now I'd like to hand it over to you, Anaí.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Hi, everyone. Am I okay to put the PowerPoint presentation, Fabrizio? Yeah? Okay. All right. Is that full screen? Yeah?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So anything, you just tell me anything that just put in here. Okay. So, as Fabrizio said, we are in a journey of self-discovery, all inspired by the spirit Jonah de Angelis. And the first chapter that we are going to study, it's in the book Times of Health and Consciousness by Joanna de Angelis and Divaldo. It's from 1991 and 1992. Okay, this is the fourth book of in the psychological series, and tonight we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic that Joanna brings to us, that it's freedom of choice. Do we have freedom of choice? What do you think about that? So let's see what Joanna is asking us to pay attention in her teachings about this subject. So, in the beginning of the chapter, and I think there has been uh, in the translation that Sylvia and Bob made to us. Thank you so very, very much, because it makes so much easier to prepare the PowerPoint presentation. Dear Sylvia and Bob. But in the hardcover, my copy, um, the beginning of this each chapter of Moments of Health and Consciousness, Joanna puts a small text, okay? And I think there was some misunderstanding, and the translation was from the beginning of the next text. But since we all study Joanna and synchronicity and Carl Jung's concepts, right? Because Joanna is asking us to pay attention and to study also the concepts of analytical psychology, or depth psychology, as we call, by Carl Jung. So we believe in synchronicity, and we believe in the wisdom of the self, capital S, or our higher self. So that was not a mistake. There was a synchronicity, and I translated the text from the beginning of the chapter, and then the ones that were translated by our dear friends are in the end of this presentation, okay? Because of the synchronicity, and you guys are going to be able to understand why. I just wanted to explain because in the Fabricio has put in the WhatsApp group both texts, so maybe some you could get confused. But the beginning is are some thoughts by Joanna that I think they are so beautiful. The beginning of the chapter, freedom of choice. So come with me in this. Um, let's let's explore what Joanna wants us to pay attention to, get connected to, and the images, the beautiful images and words that she brings to us. So Joanna starts this chapter, Freedom of Choice, saying, "The divine thought has given me the freedom to accomplish all the good that I desire." Pay attention, people. The divine thought. And she uses many expressions, different expressions to call God or the transcendent one, okay? So the divine thought has given me the freedom to accomplish all the good that I desire. Being happy or unhappy is my free choice. And then she says, I am slave to the law, which enables me to progress without stopping. Joanna, am I free to choose or am I a slave to the law? Let's think about what she's telling us. I am slave to the law. Which law? The law that enables me to progress without stopping. So here I cannot run from this law. What I am or what I will be depends on me. Here is the freedom of choice again. Inspiration from above is never lacking, however. Attuning myself to it shall be my personal aspiration. Erecting existential structures in my mind, I shall make them a reality over the course of my life. That is so profound, so profound. So she's telling us that the divine thought that God has given all of us the freedom to accomplish all the good that we desire, all the good that we desire. And that being happy or unhappy is my free choice. I have the freedom to choose to be happy or unhappy. But we are all slaves to the law, which enables us to progress without stopping. We are progressing, we are evolving, and this is a law that we cannot run from it. But what we are and what we will be depends only on us. Okay? And we always have help because it's inspiration from above that is never lacking. But we need to attune to this realm, let's say, to this inspiration. Okay? And she's telling us that we need to erect existential structures in our minds so that we make them a reality in the course of our lives. So let's unpack all of that. Let's see what Joanna, that's just the beginning of the chapter. It's a small chapter, but it's so deep. So Joanna says that you possess the freedom to shape your life according to your chosen outlook, whether that be happiness or affliction. The principle of freedom is the law of life, acting as a fundamental aspect of the universal harmony that governs all things. Okay? So, freedom in the sense of choosing whether we want happiness or affliction is totally ours. And it's a law of life, acting as a fundamental aspect of the universal harmony that governs all things. While certain realities, says Joanna, such as life and death, remain fixed boundaries determined by our physical nature, of course, we are in this material world, right? Everything else operates within the constant flow of change. Remember, I think the past meeting Joanna talks a little about Buddhism when she's analyzing suffering, right? So everything is impermanent, everything is changing, right? But even under the inevitability of continual transformation, you retain your autonomy within these boundaries. So we have freedom of choice, we have autonomy, but within these boundaries, because we are here in this physical dimension, and we are, of course, this our spirit is here reincarnated, so we are a psyche, a soul here in this moment, connected also to our bodies, right? Our physical nature. Joanna says by acting, you set in motion consequences that reflect your choices. In essence, you become the person you decide to be, moving through life along the path you consciously select. And remind me to talk about that because she's saying that we consciously select. This is the fourth book of Joanna. And people that are here with us every 2 weeks, so you know that different, that's why I always put the dates, so you can pay attention and join us, taking us little by little in this expansion of consciousness, this self awareness. So here she's talking about consciousness, that we are the person that we decide to be moving through life along the path you consciously select. Of course, we know that there is the unconscious, but we are going to get there. There are individuals who, rather than seeking contentment, choose to dwell in complaint and sorrow, finding an odd sense of fulfillment in their pessimism. Jung also talks about that. He says that there are some people that they look like, they enjoy neurosis. And when we talk in psychological field about neurosis, our neurotic patterns, we are talking about suffering. So there are some people that, and this is Jung talking, and John is agreeing with Jung, right? That there are some people that seem, because of their actions or inaction, we could say also, uh, that they look like they are enjoying, this and the suffering and have an odd sense of fulfillment in their pessimism. Such people often bargain for the affection they desire by psychically creating and showcasing high levels of suffering, hoping to receive sympathy and attention in return. In other texts, Jonah talks about victimization. Some people are like always the victims in certain situations. Similarly, she says, there are those who exaggerate or invent their hardships to manipulate affection from others, believing that constant displays of distress will secure them the care and attention they crave. Usually, people, these are very immature people, psychologically speaking. There are some, even some diagnoses like problems of personalities, that we see people very immature psychologically, craving attention and manipulating other people's affections and exaggerating and even inventing their hardships. However, this approach leads only to exhaustion of the goodwill and generosity that others might otherwise offer, leaving them emotionally isolated. Being perpetually surrounded by misfortune and negativity becomes emotionally taxing for others. And this kind of people usually are disorders of personality, and various diagnoses you could fit in that. And usually, these people, there's nothing you can do to please them. They will be always craving attention, always, like looking like if they, were very distressed and suffering a lot. And sometimes you try to make them better, to comfort them. And especially if you are a relative or, if you are a friend, but for no good because the other day or they are always complaining, okay, and always pessimist or always facing hardships. The constant emotional pressure to provide comfort or attention to those who choose to identify with suffering, says Joanna, breeds false friendships, uncomfortable situations, and increased insecurity. Emotional coercion of this kind does not foster genuine relationships or personal growth. And if you get in a relationship with someone like that, it's because something inside you is responding. So it's a lot of projection. Maybe it's the inner child that has traumas and it's hurting. But then, if the person is psychological immature, no matter what you say or you try to comfort and you try to help, but if the person really gets stuck in this kind of behavior and way of thinking, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. Well, you can always say, well, maybe you should look for professional help. Joanna says this in many of her writings. There are some limits to what we can do, and that it's healthy that we do. But otherwise, if you get inside a relationship that's like that, sometimes it's passive aggressive, we say, because there is aggressiveness, towards, of course, the world, God, other people, mother and father. If, for instance, as an example, if my inner child is hurt and I think I victimize myself and I think I'm always suffering, so like the child, and nothing that anyone does can really bring me happiness, but I should be happy. So I get stuck in this kind of duality and I project onto others all the unhappiness and all the unfulfilled desires that I had in my childhood. So we have to pay attention because sometimes there are some insecurities or problems within ourselves, conflicts that can get connected to this kind of projection, and then we get stuck in a relationship that it's very neurotic. So Joanna says that um, the constant emotional pressure to provide comfort or attention to those who choose to identify with suffering breeds false friendships, uncomfortable situations, and increased insecurity. Emotional coercion of this kind does not foster genuine relationships or personal growth. Pay attention. You can and should be happy. You have the freedom to choose. Oh, but I'm not happy because I am in a relationship or I have a son or a daughter, which is worse, or a husband and wife or whatever, a partner, a friend, a very dear friend, a brother or sister. How can I be happy if they are not happy? So let's pay attention because all of us have freedom of choice, right? But we cannot choose for others. They have to make their own choice, and we have to respect that. And sometimes people evolve in different speed, let's say, right? The path you can go of evolution, you can go faster, slower, but we cannot do for others. It's our own personal journey and it's their own personal journey. We have to respect that. So if you find yourself habitually drawn to affliction, it is possible through conscious effort to cultivate goodness and thereby liberate yourself from the cycle of suffering. Here again, Joanna is calling us to conscious effort. This is a challenge because sometimes we think that consciously we want to make this effort, we want to cultivate goodness and liberate ourselves from this cycle of suffering, but we get stuck in something unconscious. Okay, we're going to talk more about that. Difficulties that arise now are often the consequences of unwise choices made in the past. Unwise choices in this life, and we are talking through the lenses Joanna invites us to of spiritist psychology. So we know that we have been reincarnated many, many times. So these unwise choices could be from this life, but also could some of them can be brought by us, by our spirit to this life so that we can learn better. Try again. So Joanna says life offers the chance for renewal at every moment. And she says negative circumstances can transform for the better, just as dark, overcast skies can suddenly brighten with the sun. I love this. Well, at least here in my city today, it rained and the sun came, then it rained again. And I know that, for instance, people in England, since you guys are in an island, there's lots of, we have been experienced that with you guys in the Congress, right? In some couple of weeks ago, that the sun was shining and there was lots of clouds and raining, and then the sun comes again. So I think that's a very beautiful way of thinking that negative circumstances can transform for the better, just as dark, overcast skies can suddenly brighten with the sun. We have to trust this. Nature is teaching us, and nature and the psyche is part of nature. We are part of nature, and we are all sparkles of the source, capital S, of God, right? So everything that happens inside of us happens outside of us, sometimes in symbolic way. It is important not to indulge misfortune, idleness, or complaints. Remember, you are the architect of your own destiny, which holds infinite potential for you. Wow, that's beautiful. Those who belittle, devalue, and undermine themselves will find themselves left behind because we are making a choice. If we belittle, devalue, and undermine ourselves, we are we are like getting not attuned to the source, right? As Joanna was asking us to do previously. So we are getting out of attunement, right? So of course we are kind of left behind temporarily, but we are because we are saying no to evolution. To move forward, she says, it is vital to engage with the greater purpose of life. Personal development and fulfillment come only through positive engagement with this purpose. And I have been telling you that in psychiatry and psychology, the psychiatrists and psychologists are studying spirituality and the development of spirituality, especially through collecting data that brought them to the understanding that spirituality is all about purpose and meaning, finding this purpose and meaning within ourselves and in life. So, if you choose suffering, you are free to experience it until you decide to pursue well being instead. It's our freedom of choice. Small setbacks, Joanna says, or everyday occurrences should not be magnified into tragedies. Of course, we are going to suffer with setbacks and everyday occurrences, but we should not magnify them into tragedies, okay? Suffering is not predestined, it is the outcome of negative actions, not their origin. Okay? It's not the suffering that originates negative actions. It's the other way. It's the suffering is the outcome of negative actions. Take the time to reflect honestly on your life without guilt, misplaced pity, or any sense of coercion. From this honest assessment, awaken to the opportunity to create what is good, useful, and constructive. She's giving us some exercise. I don't know if you have realized that, like cognitive behavior therapy, right? Because first, she's inviting us to take some time, like meditation, prayer, silent reflection, right? So to take some time to reflect honestly on your life in the silence of our soul, not talking to anyone. It's us with ourselves. But this reflection should come without guilt, misplaced pity, or any sense of coercion, because then if we do that, we are inviting complexes, right? Because they can exert this kind of coercion on the ego. And of course, they can also, guilt, they can also make us feel guilt or even misplaced pity, victimization. Everything happens to me. I am always, so sad because I am victim of life, of people, and so on and so forth. So Jonas says, from this honest assessment, awaken to the opportunity to create what is good, useful, and constructive. So it is beautiful light teacher, this mentor that is telling us that we are able to create what is good, useful, and constructive. Oh, but I don't feel like I'm able to create. So take some time to reflect honestly on your life, on yourself. get to know what we are doing here today, and so in so many others meetings and studies, right? That we get to know ourselves, self-awareness, this journey, so that we know what is going on inside of me and why my ego consciousness, why my consciousness here in this life can has some difficult to do what this wonderful like teacher is telling us to do, this mentor is telling us to do, or our own mentor, because when we keep in silent and reflect upon really honestly upon ourselves, then we are going to have help, as Joanna said in the beginning. Always we will have help, okay? And so we find ourselves and we find this part of ourselves that is able to create what is good, useful, and constructive. Which part is that? Let's see more about that. But I brought to you Jung at this moment so that we can develop this. Which part is Joanna talking about? What, or who or what should we listen within ourselves? So I was giving by my daughter this wonderful first edition of Memory Dreams Reflections. It's the same as this image that I've put to you. It's the first edition published in the UK. And in the chapter that is called The Work, okay, if you have the book, and you want to go further, just go and take a look at this chapter. If you don't have, maybe you should consider buying the book or, and reading, because it's such a great, it's Jung's autobiography right before he passed to the spiritual realms, went back, actually. So here, Jung said, I brought to you as an example. These are Jung's words. As I worked with my fantasies, remember he broke off his relationship with Freud, and he suffered a lot in the first years because he was excluded from the psychiatric community that he had helped Freud to create. He was the first president of the Psychoanalytical International Society, and he was so close to Freud. So when they broke off their relationship, Jung suffered a lot and had all these fantasies and images coming from the the collective unconscious, the depths of his psyche, and he went kind of psychotic-like. He was not psychotic because he had his judgment preserved and he was working, but it was Jung, and he had an ego so mature and strong that he could observe what was happening with him. And from that, he remembered the red book, the black books, and so on, his writings and his experiences with the images, creative imagination, and all of the techniques that he developed from that. So what happens that he, observing what was going on with him deeply and studying and searching for connections, even historical connections, because remember, he broke off with Freud because of his ideas about the collective unconscious and the archetypes that Freud would say, no, this doesn't exist. There's only the ego, id and superego, and the personal unconscious. And so he breaks up with Freud, and he observes what's going on with him, studies, looks for, search for connections, historical connections in the psyche, and develops depth psychology, developing the concept of the collective unconscious and the archetypes. So Let's go to what Jung's saying. As I worked with my fantasies, I became aware that the unconscious undergoes or produces change. Only after I had familiarized myself with alchemy did I realize that the unconscious is a process and that the psyche is transformed or developed by the relationship of the ego to the contents of the unconscious. In individual cases, that transformation can be read from dreams and fantasies. In collective life, it has left its deposit principally in the various religious systems and their changing symbols. Through the study of these collective transformation processes and through understanding of alchemical symbolism, I arrived at the central concept of my psychology, the process of individuation. And let's just remember, everyone, please, people that are listening to this PowerPoint presentation, if you are not familiarized with these concepts, please look for our previous meetings, okay? In Burnout Society YouTube, okay? So let's just remember that according to Carl Jung, alchemy is a symbolic representation from medieval times. It's not only what alchemy, not only what developed in the modern chemistry, but Jung discovered again because remember he was being overwhelmed by all these symbols from the depths of the psyche, and he could see these processes of transformation within himself, within his psyche. Remember the honest analysis of oneself. So for Jung, when he discovered alchemy in this process, he understood that alchemy is a symbolic representation of the process of individuation, as he says here in the end, or the journey towards psychic wholeness. Okay, and it is the inner transformation of the base metal that the alchemists were trying to transform base metals into gold. So it is the inner transformation of the base metal, it's something symbolic, of the unconscious psyche into the gold of a realized self, capital S, our higher self. Not through a literal chemical process, but through a symbolic, psychological one. So Jung saw alchemical symbols and practice as a projection of the unconscious, mirroring the stages of personal growth and the integration he observed in his patient and his own life. So basically, this is the process of individuation to be whole in everything and balance in all the opposites. Remember the connuntio, the archetype of the union of the opposites within us so that we can achieve this wholeness, okay? So let's go back to Jung. An essential aspect of my work is that it soon began to touch on the question of one's view of the world and on the relations between psychology and religion. It is only natural that I should constantly have revolved in my mind the question of the relationship of the symbolism of the unconscious to Christianity as well as to other religions. Not only do I leave the door open for the Christian message, but I consider it of central importance for Western man. It needs, however, to be seen in a new light, in accordance with the changes wrought by the contemporary spirit. See how Joanna is important and spirit is psychology. Otherwise, it stands apart from the times and has no effect on man's wholeness. I have endeavored to show this in my writings. Those who know my work may possibly profit by it. Others perhaps will be impelled to look into my ideas. My life is what I have done, my scientific work. The one is inseparable from the other. The work is the expression of my inner development, for commitment to the contents of the unconscious forms the man and produces his transformation. See how that's a beautiful example of what Joanna is saying. He could, you know, leave himself to the images and get totally psychotic, or he could, as he did, endure the suffering of all those images coming from the depths of his psyche. And don't fool yourself. He was suffering a lot, okay? And try to connect to what was going on inside himself. And from there, understand his own inner process without projecting his suffering onto others. Who does that, people? Nowadays, even nowadays. So I'm going to read that because I think it's so, so important. Only this last sentence. His work is the expression of my inner development, for commitment to the contents of the unconscious forms the man and produces his transformation. All my writings may be considered tasks imposed from within. Their source was a fateful compulsion. What I wrote were things that assailed me from within myself. I permitted the spirit that moved me to speak out. Of course, he is talking about his higher self, or Jung's self, capital S. I have been impelled to say what no one wants to hear. For that reason, and especially at the beginning, I often felt utterly forlorn. I knew that what I said would be unwelcome, for it is difficult for people of our times to accept the counterweight to the conscious world. Today, I can say that it is truly astonishing that I have had as much success as has been accorded me, far more than I ever could have expected. I have the feeling that I have done all that it was possible for me to do. Without a doubt, that life work could have been larger and could have been done better, but more was not within my power. So just to finish this presentation so we can have time for questions, and then afterwards for some moments of privacy without recording. So we have the next writings in Wake Up and Be Happy, and it's from 1996, and it's the seventh book of the psychological series. And so we're going to see a little bit of what Jonah talks about: pain and making amends, or pain and repair. So just to finish, look what Jonah tells us to pay attention. Your pain is unique, non-transferable, and cannot be shared. You would like your friends and family to know the depths of your pain and suffering. That is not possible! Exclamation point. That is not possible. There are experiences that need to be lived to be understood. Every person carries their own unique pain and is concerned with the weight that oppresses them. Whatever you are enduring, it is important to remember that your friends and loved ones are not exempt from suffering. Even if they do not voice their struggles, they too face difficult and challenging moments in their lives. You may believe that yours is a heavy burden and that misfortune singles you out. You may also believe that your suffering is uniquely burdensome simply because you are unaware of the hidden struggles faced by others. The reality is that sudden emotional collapse can happen to anyone, and frequently there is no obvious reason visible to others. They, however, could not bear to maintain their balance because their own capacity for resilience is limited. For instance, I hope never happens to me something that happened to Jung, for instance, because I'm quite sure I'm not that strong, or I could never be, or at least in this lifetime, be able to endure such amount of images and of pressures from within myself, right? So we have to be very humble and to give credit to people that maybe, and most of times, they are, for instance, they have reincarnated many more times or learned better or faster. It's okay because we can always learn with them, right? But let's pay attention to our own limits. Let's be humble with that. Um, so, thus, do not hurt or resent those who seem unsympathetic to you in your times of anguish. They may be doing their best to simply cope with their own share of suffering. No one passes through the earth without experiencing suffering, each according to their own need for growth. When restoration is required, the divine laws will naturally take effect. Maintain your inner peace even in times of pain. Rebellion will make the experience unbearable. Despair magnifies the situation. Discouragement conspires against our ability to overcome it. Sorrow makes the process of healing more arduous. However, if we accept our pain as part of life, we create the conditions to overcome it. Acceptance will help us to let the light of hope guide us through our trials. That's so beautiful. So, accepting pain, we create the conditions to overcome it. Do not assume that your suffering is a punishment for being the worst soul in your spiritual past. There is pain elevation, pain conquest, pain rescue. Your rescue is something your love could not turn away from. So let love guide you. Release your doubts, pessimism, self pity, and silent rebellion. Love more, and harmony will follow swiftly. Your process of rescue because you love, your challenges ease, and you receive rare support that few people experience, unfortunately. Because Joanna is teaching us that in our process of rescuing ourselves, we need love. We need to activate this energy within ourselves. And she says, although the physical body may endure for a time, it eventually fails, revealing the spirit that returns to eternal reality. If a person endures suffering with acceptance and gains virtues from those hardships, their pain serves as a path to relief, bringing them joyful reunions and well deserved happiness. Conversely, if obligations are not met with appropriate integrity and honor, they will persist as unresolved debt accrues interest and becomes increasingly burdensome. So correct any mistakes or wrongdoings from the past and strive to do good with everything you do. By fostering positivity, Within yourself, you pave the way to freedom and fulfillment, aligning with the greater plans that God intended for us all. And to finish this beautiful, so we are, let me just say now, two, two beautiful small texts by Joanna. Love is a powerful force that originates from God, sustaining the universe and its balance. Love defies definition. It is vibrant, lively, and serves as the fundamental reason sentient beings, all beings that have consciousness, some kind of consciousness. So, sentient beings come into existence and experience emotions. Jesus summed up his doctrine in love for God, neighbor, and self. The modern science of the soul, which explore the profound nature of living beings, are captivated by their findings about conflicts and challenges. This science also turned to love, in a sense, to resolve deep existential mysteries and address both internal and external sources of turmoil that affect humanity. Even if they don't know they are doing that, I can testify for that. Love drives, enables, and fulfills happy human behavior, sparked by a longing for completeness. To love is life's greatest challenge. So now we go back to that text that I was telling you previously from Freedom of Choice. The divine presence supports me in the processes of growth and renewal. Every moment offers me a new opportunity to move forward or to correct past mistakes. Life's transformations are natural phases of development. Pruning brings renewal, pain brings awareness, trials offer education, and change in behavior demands effort. Ultimately, happiness is my destiny, which I will achieve through renewal and perseverance because I am a child of God. So let's go to our questions and answers. To you, back to you, Fabricio.
Okay, thank you, Anaí. So we will have maybe 10, 15 minutes of questions and answers, and then we will stop the recording and then move on to our last session, which is something more personal that we will want to share and discuss with the group. So is there anyone who wants to ask a question? Raise your Zoom hand. And if there is no questions at this stage, then we will stop the recording and then move on to the next session. Any question, anyone? Oh, Anna, you're on mute.
Sorry. Should we stop the recording? That I just wanted to tell people that want to go to Memories, Dreams, Reflections to this chapter, the work. Jung has some beautiful dreams and very interesting dreams that he describes in the chapter. Okay.
Okay. So I will say then, thank you to everyone who has been listening to us. Our next meeting is on Sunday, on the 26th of October. And thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye bye.